Hey, all my Crimsonites, and welcome to the Crimson Cure channel, where we embrace our femininity, increase our womanly value, and celebrate our brothers. So join me on our feminine journey to learn, heal, and grow. Hey, how you doing? Just doing a little bit more housekeeping, but we're actually going to get into it today because I thought that this was an important topic that we needed to go over. Okay. Okay. So I ran across this clip on Instagram, and I thought it was of great importance. I was going to actually do something else today, and at the last minute, I changed my mind, and I wanted to talk about this. Thank you so much, Steve, for your contribution. Thank you, CC, for your hard, good work. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Because this is important. This is one of the foundational reasons why we can't get it together as family units, as communities. And I named it this way: there are no good men, right? No more good men. Because I need everybody to really pay attention to this. And the information that I'm about to present to you is not information we don't know on its face. This is information that we have heard. This is information that we kind of know. But I need to be able to help put things in a certain perspective, because just because we have information doesn't necessarily mean that we can connect dots on certain pieces of information. Okay. Okay.
a very high rate of incarceration historically, comparatively. And the other thing is the rate of incarceration is so high, so socially concentrated, that we're no longer incarcerating the individual, but we're incarcerating whole social groups. The rate of incarceration now is about 5 times higher than it was historically. Historically, it was 100 per 100,000. Now it's about 500 per 100,000. If we look at prison, if we add jail to that, it's about 700 per 100,000. Nowhere in the world incarcerates as much as we do. We've seen extremely high rates of exposure to the criminal justice system for African American men with very low levels of schooling. So if we think about Black men who were born in the late 1970s and who are growing up through the American prison boom of the 1980s and the 1990s, the chances that they're going to serve time in state or federal prison if they dropped out of high school, a very high rate of incarceration historically, comparatively, years. We're at this point now where there's about 1.2 million African American children with a parent who's incarcerated. And that's about 1 in 9. The research shows that kids who experience parental incarceration have diminished school achievement, they have behavioural problems, depressive symptoms, acting out. And there's also evidence that these kinds of negative effects associated with parental incarceration are concentrated more among boys than among girls. And there's a very real risk here that incarceration becomes an inherited trait. The underlying issue is we've chosen prison as a way to respond to that problem of crime. And there are a whole variety of ways that we could have chosen to respond to that problem of crime. We've chosen the response of the deprivation of liberty. And we've chosen the response of the deprivation of liberty for a historically aggrieved years. We're at this.
Now, I want to point out a few things. Number one, I made my thumbnail what I made my thumbnail on purpose. The new slave is the old slave. Okay? Now, like I said, are we aware of the mass incarceration of Black men? Yeah. We know about that. We know about the school to prison pipeline. We know about that. We know about the targeting of Black men. We know about that. But there are a lot of arguments that are made and argued and debated about why that's so. And nobody ever brings up the obvious thing. See, people will debate about, well, Black men make up the largest number of prison incarcerated demographic because they are the most criminals. Right? That's one of the arguments that, the stat wouldn't be that way if Black men would stop being criminals, if Black men would stop being these low down, dirty, crime-ridden, thugged out. See, and the argument is not made by white people only. We make this argument ourselves. We make this argument among ourselves. We argue this point. We say, as Black people, that there are so many Black men that's criminals and thugs, and that's not really true. That's why I fight against the whole, all these Black men are all thugs. Even when we're talking about relationships and women, and I always fight against that because that's an old narrative that no longer is true and doesn't really hold any weight anymore. That it's not really true. The percentage, and I don't have the stats in front of me, but I would wager that the percentage of Black men who are in gangs, shooting, drug dealers and so forth and all, and just simply the criminal element of the community, that number, I would wager, has gone down over the past few decades. We are no longer living in the throes of the crack era and things of that nature. There's not to say that there are no black male criminal elements, but all of that, you know what I'm saying, every dude that's in the hood or every dude that's in an impoverished neighborhood, he gotta be a thug and he gotta be a dope boy and he gotta be, that's actually not true. That's actually not true anymore. At one time, it probably was more true than it is now, but it is not true like that anymore. Right? So even when we argue, oh, the women are all attracted all to the thugs and the doughboys, and well, that ain't that many men. It's not that really that many men. And the ones that was in the 90s, if they're not dead or in jail, these are older men. They ain't doing that. These men working regular jobs, they're not doing it. So it's argued about, well, black men need to stop engaging in so much criminal activity, and then they would not be exposed to the penal system in a higher rate than other demographics of men. Right? Right. See, it be a lot of narratives that's just not true. I'm going to tell you the narrative, another narrative that's not true. That the young black men in Chicago are killing everybody. That's not real. I lived there my whole life. And Chicago is a very large metropolitan city with millions of people in it. And just like every other very large metropolitan area, city, you've got the nice neighborhood. I ain't talking to you, Siri. You got the nice neighborhood, and then you got the not so nice neighborhood. You got the poor neighborhoods, and then you have the crime-ridden neighborhood. Old Block is not even as bad as Old Block used to be, because the Muslim brothers came and is cleaning that up. So all that news reporting, like Chicago is a war zone, is actually not. It's not. You gotta go to the crime-ridden part of Chicago to get the shootings, and you know what I'm saying, just like any metropolitan city. So you're not gonna jump off the plane and everywhere you go in Chicago, you liable to, you know what I'm saying, get got. That's not really true. I think they say that to lower the property value in Chicago so they can buy it, get the black people out of there. Say that it's a war zone so nobody will, you know what I'm saying? That drives the property value down. It's easy to gentrify because they've been working to gentrify Chicago for a very long time. So why am I saying this stuff? Because there are a lot of narratives about why black men are so much more incarcerated by such a higher percentage than every other demographic of men in the United States. And even in that clip, it's saying that the United States incarcerates more than every other country. Pretty much any other country, especially other first world countries. United States is very invested in incarceration. And it's saying in response to crime. The incarceration is not in response to crime. I want y'all to understand that the incarceration rate specifically and making it really high for Black men has nothing to do with addressing crime and trying to squash out crime. Nothing, absolutely nothing. There is one major reason why there is there's a word I'm looking for, such a wide gap between how many Black men are incarcerated and the fact that there's a school to prison pipeline that unjustly targets Black men specifically more than any other demographic of men that are in impoverished neighborhoods also. Somebody actually said it in the chat, what it's really about. There's a reason why I said the old slave is the new slave. It's about slave labor. Who else would they enslave? Who else would they? Who else is the slave in America? Who? And just like the slavery, the chattel slavery of old, first it started primarily with the men only. And now it is being expanded to Black women, putting them in there too. See, when the transatlantic slave trade first began, they were not interested in getting women because slave labor is about labor. So you need men for that. You don't really need a lot of women for that because there's going to be a lot of manual, hard labor that they're going to literally kill you to do. You're going to work till you die. The only reason that women were ever introduced into the slave trade, disparity. Thank you so much. You know, it was a word with a deep. Thank you, Sage Talk. The only reason women were ever introduced is because the United States and the other countries and territories that were involved in the transatlantic slave trade saw the writing on the wall that it was going to be made illegal. This was going to go the way of the dinosaur, okay? That slave labor and this open slave trading that was going on was going to come to a close legally. But they were not willing to not have slaves just because they were unable or would be unable to go and purchase slaves, especially at the rate that they were purchasing them. So what you do is you just breed them. So now in those last few years of going to get slaves, it incorporated females into that because they needed breed mares. They needed breed mares to breed new slaves. Okay. So that they would not have to go purchase the slaves. They could just have plantations that was simply about the breeding of them. Okay. And then you have new crops of slaves. You get the stallion, the male, the big buck. Okay. And you have literally a stable of women that he can impregnate. Okay. And it was these women's jobs and those men's jobs to constantly have sex. Okay. They did their best to make sure that these women had went fully to term to birth children because these were the new slaves that they were going to have. You can't buy them, raise them. Just like you would do any cattle or any livestock. Keep buying the livestock. You get, if you're going to raise heads of cattle, what you need is a bunch of female slaves. You need a bunch of cows. But you're not going to keep just buying cows. What you need is a couple of bulls. Okay, you need a few bulls so that when mating season comes around, you pick out a few cows that is going to be designated to be impregnated, and you send the bull over there, and the nature will take its course. The bull will sniff out the cows, and the cows will be happy about it, and they will procreate. Therefore, you get a new crop of calves that you can then raise for milking or butchering or work. Okay. So, fast forward all of that to today. The Black men specifically have historically had a bad relationship with what institution? Who have Black men always had a bad relationship with since their inception as an institution in this country? Put it in the chat. The police. And the reason for this is because they were slave catchers. Because the police are the doorway to the incarceration and the penal system. So you can't go to court, you can't be sentenced, you can't be thrown in jail without first being arrested. Okay, you have to be arrested first, right? You have to have some kind of police contact in order to, once you get in contact with them as a Black man, your freedom is up in the air, because even if you've given them some reason why they want to talk to you, because they'll just make it up. They'll just engage with you. Okay, so let's not act like every time Black men encounter the police, it was because the police actively suspected them or saw them in the commission of a crime or about to, no matter how minor or severe. Police many times will initiate contact with Black men under very innocuous circumstances. Black men don't have to be engaged in any form of criminal activity, not even so much as a moving violation for driving, okay? Just like we had a whole altercation that we saw with a Black man who ended up getting punched by a police officer, all because he was sitting in his car with the hazard lights on, waiting for someone. He was double parked in the car with the hazard lights on because he was waiting, I think, on his girlfriend or something like that to come out of the house or out of wherever. The police initiate contact with him. Instead of just asking him to just move his car or leave him alone, because if you see a car double parked, but the driver is in the car, that car has not been left to just sit there. You know he's gonna pull off at some point, or he's probably waiting on somebody. So the reason I bring that up is because it's for an example of how the police will initiate contact with Black men under innocuous circumstances. How many times have we been sitting in a car with the hazard lights on, pulled over, double parked, waiting on somebody to come out of a store or come out the house or whatever? It's a common thing. It's not illegal to do that. Sometimes it's inconvenient to do that, but it's not illegal to do so, especially if you don't leave your vehicle. Okay. Okay. So Black men have always had this strained, bad relationship with the police because it is their experience that every time they come in contact with the police, that's the entryway into some kind of trouble. Okay, now they got to go to a court date, or they got to pay a ticket, or worst scenario, they get charged with something, you know what I'm saying, or whatever. Okay. Now, that explains to some degree, in a nutshell, the bad relationship between Black men and the police. Now, for the longest, this was concentrated almost solely on Black men. Black women didn't quite have as much of an issue with their encounters with police officers. Okay? Not to say that there never was any incidents. However, it was not so much of a big deal. And to the point where Black women were actually, and this was real crazy to me, that Black women were actually trying to compete with Black men about who was victimized more by police officers or killed while unarmed. And it was a crazy argument to me, because who would want to compete in such a category? So it was almost like Black women were, to a certain degree, happy about Sandra Bland, and happy about Breonna Taylor, and happy about Sonia Massey. Okay? And these are 3 female names that I can think of right off the bat. Okay? I know that there's a couple of more. And it was like, because that validated that, oh, the women get killed too, just as much as the men. So, you know what I'm saying? It's not just Black men who are being targeted, it's Black people. And it's like, no. It's Black men. We don't even want them in the category. So why are y'all trying to compete with the category? It's crazy. So now, speaking of being able to name females, Black females, who are also have been the victim of being deleted unjustly or while unarmed. Okay. Now we're seeing an uptick in police contact with Black women that aren't going so good. Okay. They are being much more physical with Black women now. They're hitting them, they're slamming them, they're punching them, they're roughing them up. They're, you know what I'm saying? They're just being real careless with them, you know what I'm saying? And things of that nature, treating them like they do the men. Okay? This is follow me. The reason I'm saying this is I'm drawing the comparison between the transatlantic slave trade and focusing on the men first, and then in the latter part, focusing on the women, as compared to the prison, the incarceration rate, focusing on the Black male at first, and then in the latter part, focusing more on Black women as well. And the reason why these things are similar and can be compared is because this is still slave labor that we're talking about. It's the slave trade. It's still the slave trade. Just don't got to go overseas, you know, and to do this. Okay. The new slave is the old slave. I'm going to take a commercial break. One of my mods, do me a real quick favor and put the chat on subscriber only for me. But after these messages, we'll be right back, because everybody needs to go to ashkicking.com. We are in the last stretch of summertime. So we definitely want to continue to wear our dresses as long as it's warm enough, our sundresses and sandals and shirts and t-shirts and all of that good stuff. And we need our skin to be looking good, feeling good, being soft, being great, being wonderful. Only way you're going to do that is getting the body butter that is sold at ashkicking.com. The link is at the top of the chat. If this is going to be your first order, please take advantage of the 10% discount using the promo code Crimson at checkout, okay? Because most of us, have only got a little bit. We're in what they call the dog days of summer, those last, days where it's kind of going to be hot still. So you definitely want to be able to get your body butter and get your skin in order, because this body butter is not overly thick. It's a really, really, really smooth, good consistency, soaks into the skin really quickly, so it doesn't leave you oily and all buttery and slick. Sometimes how, body butters and lotions don't like to absorb. You're not going to have a problem with Ash Kicking at all. It's a wonderful product. Once again, click the link at the top of the chat, ashkicking.com. I don't know how many likes I need, but I owe you guys a bam, 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 bam. You gotta hit the like button, bam, bam. You gotta All right, go ahead and hit the like button. Let me know if you guys have gone ahead and put it on subscriber only. Just put it in the chat or something like that, because I just want to know. Okay. All right. Thank you, Miss Bella. And thank you, Michael. So there has always been a conspiracy. Did I read that one? Anyways, thank you for your contribution. Okay. So now we're going to read an article. Okay. I'm going to show you something. Well, the first thing that I want to show you. Okay. The 13th Amendment to the United States Constitution abolished slavery and involuntary servitude, except, there's an exception, punishment for a crime. Okay? Slavery has been abolished in the United States, and also any involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for a crime. So if you get locked up, now you can be made a slave. Now you are a slave. You can now be forced to do slave labor and involuntary servitude. Why do you think, before I go to this, why do you think that's one of the things that Black men are speaking out against Kamala Harris? You know what? That was petty. I shouldn't do that. Miss Kamala Harris. Because one of the things that she was doing was not only incarcerating Black men at a high degree, she was also keeping them incarcerated beyond their sentences in order to do labor for the state. That's important. Not just because it's her, but because of the reasoning. Not just because it's her, but because of the reason she was trying her best to use her authority and her position as the DA in California to keep Black men incarcerated over and above their sentences, to specifically to maintain labor for the state of California. go right over that. It was more important for her to fulfill the obligation by being a member of the system that does not have Black men nor the Black community's best interest in mind. She had to be forced to reveal evidence that would have kept a man from being deleted on death row. She would have let that man meet his maker by the state. Had she simply not been forced, I believe by a higher court, I want to say, that forced her, hey, you can't do that. If there's evidence that's going to exonerate that man, you have to let him be exonerated. You can't just not do that. But this is the person they want in the White House. This is the person that's been in the White House for years, right? But I don't want to focus on her. I want to focus on the reason why she was doing that. Okay? That it was about labor. Okay? I want to stay there. Because there's a reason, and we're going to get into it with this article, that America incarcerates, okay, at such a high degree. U.S. prison labor programs violate fundamental human rights. No kidding. This was posted June the 16th of 2022 by the University of Chicago. Okay. Incarcerated workers generate billions of dollars worth of goods and services annually, but are paid pennies per hour without proper training or, and this is real key, the opportunity to build skills for careers after release, according to a comprehensive nationwide report released by the University of Chicago Law School's Global Human Rights Clinic and the American Civil Liberties Union. So the ACLU and Chicago's Law School Division, University of Chicago's Law School Division, okay? In a first of its kind report, can you guys see this? Because I need y'all to be able to see this. Okay. Let's make it a bit bigger. In a first of its kind report, Captive Labor Exploitation of the Incarcerated Workers examines the use of prison labor throughout the U.S. and highlights how incarcerated worker labor helps maintain prisons and provides vital public services. Captive labor, slave labor, also calls for far-reaching reforms to ensure prison labor is truly voluntary. It is not. And that incarcerated workers are paid fairly, properly trained, and able to gain transferable skills. Now, we're going to go back. Because why is the recidivism rate high? If you are captive, you have been incarcerated, okay? And they make these men farm. So they're learning agriculture, such useful skills. They are learning agriculture, how to grow things. That is a life-sustaining skill, how to grow food. What plants and what? So they're learning agriculture, horticulture. Then you've got some men that are in there building computer component parts. Okay? Then you've got men in there doing carpentry. They're helping to build the furniture and things of that nature. Okay? These men, although incarcerated, are being used via slave labor to do these tasks but they forbid them. See, I'm not worried about them not being paid. I am and I'm not. From the standpoint of it shouldn't even be slave labor in the first place. But beyond that, my biggest issue with all of this, which really makes it slave labor, the thing that really underscores that this is about slave labor, is that the person performing the labor can't get a return. They can't get a return. Not only are they not being paid properly because they're inmates and quote unquote shouldn't have to be paid, but they are not allowed to utilize their knowledge and their skills and say that that is work experience for them. They can't come out and have a transferable skill set that the state vouches for and said, no, this person served 10 years. 7 of those, he was building car parts. Whole mechanic. This is a whole mechanic. So we're gonna go ahead and grant him a degree for being a mechanic, and he can go right into that. Right from jail. Instead of saying that men who have been incarcerated, especially for nonviolent crimes, especially for non-sexual crimes and things of that nature, egregious things, right? These men should be able to get out and to make sure that they get their life right and don't come back. All that work that they was doing should be able to be put on a resume that they are helped with in preparation for letting them go. They should have people who work with them to write the resume and say it, you know what I'm saying? And let it be a special thing, like a special program where, okay, they're coming from prison, yes, but they have so many years of experience here and here and here. So we as the state are going to vouch for these people, especially if they had good behavior and all that kind of stuff. Listen, these men have been rehabilitated and they are ready to go back into society and be productive members and be able to stand up on their own 2 feet and not be a burden to anyone, not be a burden to family, friends, or the system. Okay. And they don't have any incentive to go back to a life of crime or to do any criminal activity because they can't make it, because it's too difficult, because as soon as they come out, they're going to have some place to go. They're going to have to take care of themselves. So it's not even really like a big grace period. Like as soon as you come out, you're an adult, right? So you need to be able to find a place to stay. And the way they got these little halfway houses set up, that's not good enough. Places to stay. All right. Jobs that if the job is not lined up, that they should be able to take that experience that they had, the work experience, and go to other places that's not tied to the state or not tied to the prison system or anything like that. Just go like a regular civilian and go apply to these places. But they can't do that because they're not interested in Black male rehabilitation. They're not interested in that. Because you're a slave. See, I keep telling y'all there was no expiration date. There was no expiration date for when you were a slave or when slavery was going to end. See, when they were doing transatlantic slave trade, they didn't say, well, eventually we're going to have these people be really a part of our society and as is equal part. No. You were always going to be that. And they was always going to find a way to make you that. You were always going to be that, and they were always going to find a way to make you that. They were going to put it in the system. They were going to embed it in the institution, because slavery was an institution. So you were always going to be a part of that. I keep telling you, white supremacy is institutional. It doesn't have to be individual. Nobody has to hate Black people. Nobody has to hate any Black people. It's not necessary to hate you. It's not necessary to, you know what I'm saying, be outwardly rude and say racist remarks. And it's not, that's not even necessary no more. I want to go back to it because this, right? John Tompkins, how you doing, John? Says 13th Amendment says that slavery is okay if you commit a crime. Armed with this info, why are you doing F stuff in the street? But here's the thing. I addressed that in the beginning of the video. It's not always about all these Black men, all the men that get incarcerated is not a criminal element. They not. When you can be thrown in jail for child support payments, that's not a criminal act. You're not out there robbing nobody. You're not hurting anybody. Who are you hurting? Nobody. If you get stopped by the police for you're driving and you get stopped by a moving violation, they're supposed to give you tickets. They're not supposed to initiate all of this contact with you as a citizen. If you're not suspected of an actual crime or they see you kind of committing a crime, there's really no reason why the police should initiate contact with you. There's none. And we know that they will initiate contact, like I said earlier, with Black men under the most innocuous, mundane circumstances. He doesn't have to be doing anything. He literally don't got to be doing nothing. There are so many instances of police initiating contact, and then, like, if the Black dude has an attitude because why you talking to me, they'll escalate that whole situation. Then he'll be charged. You know what he'll be charged? If they can't find nothing else, he'll be charged with resisting arrest. The reason that it's like that isn't just because the system hates Black people because it's race. It's not just because it's racist, but because it is profitable. And they're not going to enslave nobody else. We're the slave class. In their eyes, we're the slave class. Back to the article. Okay. As our report describes in detail, the labor conditions of incarcerated workers in many U.S. prisons violate the most fundamental human right to life and dignity. Okay. In any other workplace, these conditions would be shocking and plainly unlawful. The many incarcerated workers we interviewed told us story after story of inadequate equipment and training, punishment doled out if workers refused to work, and an overall helplessness to a government institution functioning as both a jailer and a boss. That is the definition of slave owner. Because you weren't free to leave the plantation, you weren't free to go. You were property. So you were working as both property and employee. It's the exact same thing. Key finding includes nearly 2/3 of incarcerated people working behind bars, amounting to roughly 800,000 workers incarcerated in prison. 800,000 person workforce. Do you understand that? That this is the workforce. This is the workforce. We out here struggling for jobs. And the reason we out here struggling for jobs is because they have slave labor to do your job. The reason a lot of us are out here struggling for jobs is because why would they pay you a living wage when they're getting incarcerated men to do that same work or better, and they don't have to pay them anything? What did they do to the prisons? The prisons are not all state-owned. What they do to the prisons? What most of the prisons are what? And they are, most of the prisons are privately owned. This is how they get over the loopholes, the legal loopholes, the constitutional loopholes. Because if it's a privately owned institution, that makes it a business, makes it a corporation with its employees and its workers. See, not every prison is a state prison. There are state prisons, and then there are privately owned prison houses. They privatized the prisons so that the prisons can now be businesses, and they can operate as businesses. And they have to answer to the state in a certain way, but if it's a business and I'm contracted with the state, it's up to the state to promise me that they can fill my prison to a certain percentage. So let's say I need to keep my prison full at least to 75% capacity. The state is the people catcher. That's the agreement. That's the agreement. We're a private organization. And we need, workers. We need to fill this. We need to fill it. It can't operate without any people. So it's not up to us to procure. Private companies can't arrest people. That's human trafficking. They can't kidnap you. That would be human trafficking. And then they would have to be answerable. They'd be going to jail, right? To a federal prison. But since they can't engage in human trafficking and kidnapping, which would be like the most obvious form of slavery, right? They have to do a slavery that is okay with the institution, okay? So it's up to the state and then the municipalities within the state to capture the people, to bring them to the privatized prison, right? And who are they gonna go for the most? They're mostly gonna go for Black men. Because Black people are the slaves. Black men are the slaves. So they're going to go get the slaves that you always been, that they ain't never going to think of you as nothing else. They're never going to think of us as nothing else. This is why I don't like the idea of trying to beg them to right the wrong. They can't. Listen, I'm going to tell y'all something. The main reason they are never going to give reparations for slavery, and they don't even talk about it, is because slavery is not over. They're still doing it. They can't give you reparations for something that they do currently. That's what's like trying to get reparations from Hitler, and it's still going on. Like that's just like the Japanese trying to get reparations for the internment camps, and there's still internment camps with Japanese people in them. Like they can't give you reparations for something that they're not sorry for, right? Let's just be honest. They're not sorry. There is no regret, and slavery is ongoing. And now since they privatize everything, and it's this big, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. They're not gonna not do that. Are you crazy? They are not gonna dismantle that at all. Not even a little. Not dismantling that. Billions of dollars? But with a B? No. You know how many wealthy individuals have stock in companies that also are part of, and see, that's a hidden thing, right? They try to hide that as much as possible. Which corporations, which companies are involved, because there's not just one company per prison. There are various companies in contract with one prison. So some of the workforce goes there. Now, these companies do hire in the private sector, like they hire regular civilians to do the job, right? But there's a percentage of the workforce, and because this helps with overhead, right? Because they don't have to pay a certain percentage of their workforce if they get that workforce through prisons. They have to really pay you. It's very light on the budget. They don't have to give you insurance. They don't have to give you any benefits. They don't have to reimburse you for anything. They don't have to give you sick days. They don't have to give you anything. They have to give you anything. They have to give those people anything. They don't even so much as have to say, yeah, you worked for us. And believe you me, nearly every large conglomeration or corporation has their hand in privatized prison. So there's not going to be any such thing as boycotting anybody, because you boycott your whole life. You might as well just leave the United States. Now, more than 3/4 of incarcerated people surveyed, 76%, report facing punishment such as solitary confinement, which we know is mentally detrimental. Okay, it's a mental detriment, right? Being put in solitary confinement, especially for very long periods of time. The human being doesn't really work well like that. So we're talking about mental breakdown. Denial of sentence reduction. So you can't get your sentence reduced for things like good behavior and, you know what I'm saying, being a model prisoner, so to speak, and, you know, going back and trying to appeal your case and trying to bring up to them that, you know, I don't get in trouble in there and things like that. They don't care about that. And or loss of family visitation. So nobody can talk to you, nobody can come, you know, and all of that. So this is very key for people, especially when they are doing bids in prison. Anybody that's willing to contact them and come visit them, this is very helpful for their mental health, to know that the people on the outside didn't forget about them, because when you are in prison, so I've heard and so I can imagine, time stands still for you if they decline to work. So you can't not work. So it's involuntary, right? Because if it was voluntary, then you wouldn't be getting a punishment if you didn't want to do it. Prison laborers are at the mercy of their employers. They have no control over work assignments, are excluded from minimum wage and overtime protections, are unable to unionize, do not receive adequate training and equipment, are denied workplace safety guarantees despite often dangerous working conditions. As a result, 64% of incarcerated workers surveyed report worrying about their safety while working. 70% say they receive no formal job training, and 70% report not being able to afford basic necessities like soap and phone calls with the wages. Incarcerated workers produce at least $2 billion with a B in dollars in goods and $9 billion worth of prison maintenance services annually. But this number is not closely tracked and is likely much higher. All right. So we don't even got to pay nobody to upkeep the prison or maintain it. We just make you do it. So the companies are saving, the privatized companies that own the prisons and things like that, saving so much money, they don't have to invest it because we just make the prisoners do everything. Why would we hire cooks when the prisoners can cook? Why would we hire maintenance people when the prisoners can maintain? Why would we hire a cleaning crew when the prisoners can do it? Why would we ever do that? Yet most states pay incarcerated workers pennies per hour for their work. 7 states, Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, Mississippi, South Carolina, and Texas, pay nothing. Okay. Are we surprised with the states named? Pay nothing for the vast majority of prison work. Other states pay on average between 15 and 52 cents per hour for non-industry jobs. Prison laborers often see up to 80% of their check withheld for taxes, room and board expenses, and court costs. And then they'll tell you that the taxpayers are paying for it. We pray for prisons. No, you don't. The prisoners are paying for the prison. So your tax dollars don't go to that either. They lie so much about where your tax money goes. You're supporting prison? No, you're not. More than 80% of prison laborers do general prison maintenance, which subsidizes the cost of our bloated prison system. Other tasks represent less than 10% of work assignments, including public work projects like road repair, natural disaster assistance, forestry work, and maintenance of parks, schools, and government offices, state prison industries, agricultural work, and coveted private company work assignments. So they're getting the prisoners to do the city and government work. Your taxes are paying for the roads. No, they're not. They up the toll on the toll roads, but they don't pay for the road. Who owns the toll? Your tax money goes for the laborers that go maintain the parks. No, because they're using half of that is prison work. There's the prison workers. Are there some some private citizens that are being hired for some of this? Yeah, because they can't make the whole thing that, right? Because then it would be suspicious. But all they gotta do is put them in them little reflective jackets. You don't know the difference. You don't know who's being let out of prison to do that work and who's not. All of them got them little reflective things on. You can buy them at any little store that sell worker clothes. let's do this. I'm not going to read the whole article, but I am going to read these next two paragraphs especially. The United States has a long problematic history of using incarcerated workers as a source of cheap labor and to subsidize the cost of a bloated prison system. Incarcerated workers are stripped of even the most minimal protection against labor exploitation and abuse. They are paid pennies for their work, even as they produce billions of dollars for states and federal government. It's past time we treat incarcerated workers with dignity. If states and the federal government can afford to incarcerate 1.2 million people, they can afford to pay them fairly for their work. The exploitation of incarcerated workers is rooted in the exception clause to the 13th Amendment, which bars slavery except for people who have been convicted of crimes. In many states and in the United States Constitution, exception clauses allow for workers in prisons to be exploited, underpaid, and excluded from workplace safety protection laws. Worse, the exception clause in the 13th Amendment disproportionately encouraged the criminalization and re-enslavement of Black people, specifically men, during the Jim Crow era. And we still feel the impact of this systematic racism to this day in the disproportionate incarceration of Black. They got to politically correctly include brown, but Black men. The domino effect is a biocultural event of its own. Exactly. Don't care if the men die or what. They don't care. They are upholding an environment which includes its institutions, the law, the legal system. They are upholding an environment that is inherently against Black men by using Black men, by using men's biology, their literal bodies, by using Black men's literal bodies. So they are literally using Black male biology to uphold the legal system, the institution of privatized prisons and things of that nature, by inculcating them with a culture that goes directly from biology to the environment. What am I talking about? Prison has a culture. Black men, the longer they stay there, become institutionalized. They become a part of that culture, which is very different from the culture, excuse me, from the culture on the outside. So being institutionalized, this is what makes the cycle. The key is the culture part of it. Because if there was no such thing as prison culture and being institutionalized for it, the recidivism rate would not be so high. And therefore, it would not be able to successfully hold up the prison system. Okay? So they from young, they utilize Black male biology. They use the culture outside by showing the Black male image to be a criminal and he's just a no good guy. This is imprinted on the mind. And then, even if it's not, even if that type of cultural indoctrination doesn't take, which it's important to note that it's not as effective as it used to be. Okay, this type of cultural influencing of showing Black men in a particular light is not as effective on its own as it used to be. So this was the introduction why they had to introduce the school to prison pipeline, okay? To make young Black men more susceptible to being confronted by police officers and, having these encounters with police. Because again, police are the doorways into the penal system, right? You can't have a court date, you can't be sentenced, you can't be charged with anything without first having to be arrested and being confronted by the police, right? Right? So we have to be mindful of the confluence in this particular situation between biology, culture, and environment. Okay. So this is a work. We need to understand just how much of a work this is against the Black men who are actually the cornerstones of the Black community. Black men are the cornerstones, just like every other man is the cornerstone for his community. The problem with us as a group is that there's a problem within our biology and our culture. Because women teach culture, but they do not create it. That's important. Women pass culture. Women perpetuate culture. But women do not create culture. Ever. Ever. They never do it. It is not within the purview of women to create culture. It is only within our purview to perpetuate a culture, to pass it along. The problem is that since we've been here in this country, and those of us who have slave ancestry from this country have never truly been able to create a complete culture of their own that didn't have anything to do with the institution that we've been slave to. In other words, we've been given culture, not have it created by our men, unfettered by an institution that is hell-bent on them not creating it. Do you understand? Other men of other demographics, whether they come here or not, are in their own places. And so therefore they are the ones who create their cultures. That's why the cultures work differently in other places, because Most other countries are homogenous. America is unique like that. Other countries are homogenous for the most part. Like a lot of different countries are homogenous. And so in those countries, those men are in every sector of that country, from the governmental positions to the influential positions to the environmental positions to they're all throughout, and they share a mindset, they share a set of values. So their culture is built by those men, unfettered by what we're fettered by. Do you all get what I'm saying? So their women perpetuate the culture that their men created. So Japanese women are perpetuating a culture that Japanese men created. That's why it works so well. That's why nobody's really mad at it, right? Black women are not perpetuating a culture that Black men created, because Black men would not have created this culture that works completely against them. They would not have done that. So Black women are perpetuating a culture that was given to them, like every other woman will perpetuate a culture given to her. It was given to her by men. It just wasn't given to her by her man. Feminism created by men. It just wasn't Black men. Hookup culture created by men. It just wasn't Black men. Well, why would men put that into effect for this very outcome? For this very outcome. And our biggest task as a people is exercising, like an exorcism, exercising white supremacy out of our value system so that we can have a culture that is not influenced primarily by the lost value system, which is white supremacy. That's why I talk about values. That's why I talk about it. This is white supremacy right here. That's how it has always worked for us. It don't work for us. It works against us, actually. It always has. It always will. There's no way that we can ever make this work for us. We can't. We can't do it. It will never work. We've tried. We tried it for generations. It's always a failure. It's not going to work because this is a doomed value system. It is doomed. It is doomed. So this is why I talk about the 10 life values, because we are the ones that are responsible for understanding which value system has been given to us, hence which culture we practice, what values we actually live out, and then we have to switch that over to a 10 life value system and actually live that system. It's a lived thing. It's not something that you say, it's something that you do. It's not said, it's done. It's a corruptive system. Kamala Harris went to Kenya to spread a corruptive value system, and they got her up out of there for it. Don't come here trying to indoctrinate us with that. Why was Kenya able to do that? Why was the country of Kenya and its president, why was he able to say, and they were able to say as one voice, no, because they're a homogenous country and their culture is created by their men, and the women perpetuate their culture, not an American or a lost value gonna work unless the men there decide that somehow it will be beneficial for a small percentage of them to corrupt their own country that way from a moral standpoint. And what we find is that you basically have to be enslaved for that to happen. Men who are in a country where everybody look like them and they have a culture of they're not going to create a culture that just destroys their own people. The reason why the powers that be can get away with it in America is because America is not homogenous. Everybody here ain't they people. And as a matter of fact, they only think about a small percentage of the people are actually their people, and those people are protected. Everybody else go when the wagon come. And it affects us worse because we're so susceptible because of the history that Black Americans have with America through chattel slavery. That was a breaking of us, and we've never really had an opportunity to truly reset, because every time we do that, what happens every time we say, okay, we're not going to participate with their value system and we're going to do what we do, they always destroy it. Like physically, literally, they will come delete us for that. So we have to understand our position with these people. Our position has never changed, especially from their perspective. From the perspective of the institutions and the powers that be that run this country, Black people will always be the slave class. Always. Specifically the ones with ancestry from the transatlantic slave trade. See, they rather uplift actual African immigrants over us. They rather do that. The reason why African immigrants and other immigrants could just step over us is because they're not the slave class. We are. Now, when you have African immigrants and immigrants of color, they're not going to be able to be given the path to whiteness. So they've got a glass ceiling that they're going to hit, but they are still going to be ingratiated above us. They're still going to do that. That they're going to do. Because if nothing else, it creates a division. Right? So this also ensures that Africans that immigrate here we won't come together, that they don't actually increase our numbers for several reasons. They're making sure that we can't come together on the basis of culture and value systems. They're making sure that we can't do that. And so there's enmity. There's enmity between American-born, American Blacks, and any African immigrant who comes here. Right? The only immigrants that are going to be given path to whiteness is like the white not Puerto Ricans, but white Mexicans and stuff like that, the white ones. Not the ones that got too much melanin. So the whiter looking ones, they'll be given a path to whiteness. They'll be included in whiteness. Why do you think they're letting them over so much? because they got to increase their numbers. And they'll do that with a demographic of people that they don't necessarily haven't historically liked or gotten along with. Because the Irish hadn't gotten along with, you know what I'm saying, the Scottish and, you know, and all that kind of stuff, but they're all white when it comes to you. They can squabble among each other. That don't got nothing to do with you. And it don't got nothing to do with them being white when it comes to you. Okay. Exactly. Whiteness and blackness is a construct here. That's one of the reasons why us as American blacks and our melanated people from other countries have problems seeing things eye to eye, because they identify by nationality, right? Because everybody look like them anyways. So they don't identify through race. They identify through culture and nationality like everybody else, right? We have to identify by race in this country because it's a racist country. It was built on it. So there is no, they try to pay lip service to, well, we're all homogenous because we're all American. No. Because when you talk to if you talk to certain people, only white people are American. Let's get that straight. Everybody else doesn't belong. They have the nerve. It's the audacity. Because the natives were here before anybody. And when I say natives, I mean the black ones and the red ones. I mean everybody that was native on this continent before white folk showed up. That's who I'm talking about when I say native. I'm gonna ask y'all this because I'm done. We're gonna sign off. Yes. Yes. A lot of damage. They actually enacted the same thing to your people that they did to the uh to the people that they got through the slave trade. They actually enacted the same thing. They gave y'all the lost value system too. Then they tried to tell us that the only Native American were the people that we quote unquote think of as Indian, which still calling folks Indians when we know that that was a mistake. That's a whole different conversation. So we were so here. Everybody was like here, right? That's why sometimes you hear black people, every American born black person does not have slave ancestry. And people tend to think that I don't know that because I talk about Black Americans and I'll mention the slave trade. I know that there are born blacks here that's always been here. Their family's always been here since before the transatlantic slave trade. They don't have slave ancestry. I know that. I happen to be one who does have slave ancestry. I want to ask y'all something before we go. Is anybody else getting these little begging emails from Kamala's campaign? How they get my email address? I ain't never fill out nothing with them. Is y'all getting these begging emails? Just send $1. Now, if you get those crackheaded emails, Kamala, quit sending crackheaded emails. You worse than a crackhead. You worse than a scammer trying to get you to send something cash out. I'm not sending you nothing. Okay? Do you got that? Lose my email. Don't be just spamming my email. I got like 5 of them in like 2 days. I know they get you. They got everybody's email. I was kind of being a little facetious. But, come on now. Trump sending a bunch of texts trying to get some type of, I won't click it. So I don't know exactly what they're asking, but it's like survey. I won't click that. I'm not clicking that. I'm not clicking not clicking anything. Okay, for any of you. I'm not answering no emails for Kamala. I'm not clicking no little shady links from Trump. Leave me alone. Thank you, Jared. So I've been watching a lot of body cam footage. Black women are wild in these streets. Strong and independent has led to more physical encounters. Thank you so much, Willie, for your super sticker. Thank you, Essential Entities. I'm truly appreciative of you doing this work, sister, 100%. Thank you so much. Thank you, King Pepper says, USA knows Black men will seek revenge if we get power. Thank you there. I said it. Says salute, CC. Thank you so much. Thank you, twins. Employee to yay poly empty. Okay. When you all psychologically look into words, a hidden reality is revealed into plain sight and was never hidden. Mass energy harvesting. Thank you so much, Curtis, for your super stick. Appreciate you. Thank you, Robert. So when I tried to explain this to teenagers about to become adults in the group home I worked in, but some of them bragged about going to jail when they got older, which was frustrating. Thank you, Kisei. Said Crim Security is a TED Talk. Thank you for your content damage, and it's a free for all. It can recover, but it's not gonna be in the mass that we would like it to be. It's gonna be a small group that do it, because a rebuilding from a new foundation actually has to happen, and it's so much work that the vast majority are not going to be willing to do so. So only the minority of us who understand what kind of work has to be done and is willing and able to actually do that work, because the foundation upon which we build has to be scrapped. And that foundation is the white supremacy we hold up here, played out through the lost value system. We got to drop that. That's a whole foundation that we work from, which is a false paradigm. Takes a lot of work. 90% of people won't want to do it. Thank you, Bernard, says showing my support. Thank you so much, sweetheart. I appreciate you. Yeah, I got an email. They don't know who he's sending emails to. But anyway, We're going to get on up out of here. Don't forget to go here. Don't forget to go here. Let me share. Don't forget to go here and get your apparel, your t-shirts. They are on sale and they're doing well. And I want to thank everybody who has made purchases of them. Thank you so much for supporting me in this endeavor as I get the merchandise up to speed and get the store full and things of that nature. We even got to knock it off. I know people were looking for the knock it off. We got that one. All right. We even got to knock it off. We got to knock it off for the guys too. So it's not just the ladies. We got to knock it off for the guys as well. All right. So of course, every week, there's going to be additions to the store. All right. Every week, I'm going to be adding new designs and I'm actually going to be adding new things. So in order to make your purchases, all you got to do is go to crimsoncure.com, the same place that you go to get my book, same place that you go get the book, same place, right? That you go and buy the book. This is the same place that you buy everything else. So I made everything as easy as possible. You know, no extra steps. You ain't got to go all these extra places, you know, to try to get, you know, merch from here, merch from there. Just go to crimsoncure.com, pick out the shirt you like. And the process is easy. The ordering process is super easy. No fuss, no muss, no hassle. Okay. Also, members, check the community tab. There's a members only community tab that only you can see. Members get 20% off every purchase of any of the t-shirts or what have you for a limited time. So go and get your discount code. Members, go and get your discount code off of the community tab. I placed it in there. It's a members only tab. So it really kind of should be at the top for you guys. You should see it. Like, you shouldn't have to scroll too much to get that. So go ahead and get it. Get your 20% off of your orders for your t-shirts. I'm going to start adding other stuff too, not just t-shirts, right? So we're going to have the hoodies. We're going to have hoodie sets. I was thinking of like gym bags and, you know, bags and stuff like that, backpacks and things of that nature. So there's other things as well. I'm going to try to get the fans. The fans is an interesting one because not everybody has those. So that's going to be interesting. But I am going to add more than just t-shirts. Especially in the coming months, it's going to start getting a little chilly and people are going to want like little hoodies and jackets and things of that nature, right? All right. So thank you so very much once again for everybody's support. Jump down in the comment section. Let me know what you think. Like, share, subscribe to the channel if you have not. Once again, I'm your hostess, The Crimson Cure, and this was my perspective. Bye-bye, Crimsonites.